Hey, and you can find the third step prayer on page 63 of your big book. I hope everybody's got your big book handy. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.
All right, Rob, thank you. So we are at the very beginning of the book today. So it's what we work from is the Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book. It's the fourth edition. And so if you will open your book to the very first page, which is the title page. And I would talk about the fact that Alcoholics Anonymous is our basic text. It's the foundation of the program that we have. It is our program of recovery, and what we cover in this big book study um, is the first portion of the book, which includes the title page, the table of contents, and the preface, and each of the forewords, and then all the way through to the end of the first 164 pages. Plus, we also, as you guys well know, we also do Dr. Bob's Nightmare in this. So it's quite a bit more than just the 164 pages that we cover. So if you'll turn the page to the next page, what we have here is a couple of things. It was Hank Parkhurst and Joe Warden that named AA. They had some other ideas. I'll go over those real quickly with you. It'd be 100 Men, The Way Out, and or the Bill W. movement. Those were all considered for the book, and they settled on Alcoholics Anonymous. Um, if you look down, it's the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. Um, it's actually the first promise is in there, is how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. The most important part of all of that is the story. We really want to tell the story of how this happened, and it also is the first time that the book uses the word recovered. So that's another thing that we would want to highlight here, is that you actually do recover um, from alcoholism. You always are an alcoholic, but just like anything else, you can recover from it. Again, this is the solution that we're talking about. Um, it is the fourth edition, and it is a collective understanding of the first 100, and it's their understanding. And as a kind of a um, thing here, it's AA is not a treatment for alcoholism. It is a solution for alcoholism. I think there's a big difference in that. This isn't a medical book or anything like that. And um, we'll treat it as such. So if you'll turn the page, and we'll look at the table of contents. This book is an instructional manual. It's not fiction or nonfiction. It's service to others in the instruction itself. So it's an instructional manual. The contents here, and I'll talk about this. We've kind of already covered it. The title page, the things that we cover are the um, preface, the four forewords, the doctor's opinion, and then we start at page 1 with Bill's story. And we go all the way down to, like I said, a vision for you. And then we also cover the appendices a little bit. especially on page 567. And and then also Dr. Bob's Nightmare, which is on page 171. So if I was looking at the table of contents and I looked at the preface and the forewords, this is if you bracket that on to the right, as I've got written in my book, it's the general information and history of the book, and so I kind of started out with that, the general information and history. If you look at Bill's story, there is a solution and more about alcoholism, which is the first three chapters. It's really more about step one. So they take quite a bit of time to cover what would be considered step one. We Agnostics really kind of covers step two. How it works is kind of all the steps, but there's some focus on steps 3 and 4. And then into action is also for steps 5 through 11. And then working with others is step 12, which they spend an entire chapter on step 12. The two wives, the family afterward, and to the employers and a vision for you is good information for sponsoring, and we'll talk more about that when we get there. It does kind of cover steps 8 through 12, and so there. So if you turn the page to VI, we are with the low bottom, what I've titled as the low bottom drunks. It is really the part one of the stories. I can give you a few names if you want with regard to who these folks are. Bill Dodson is Alcoholics Anonymous number 3, which is on page 182. That's Bill Dodson. Gratitude in Action is Dave Bancroft. Number 3 is Marty Mann, Women Suffer Too. And we were just talking about her just briefly this morning. Our Southern friend is Fitz Mayo. The Vicious Cycle was Jim Burwell. Jim's story is Mr. Jim Scott. And then The Man Who Mastered Fear, which is Archie Trowbridge. And then number 8 is He Sold Himself Short is Earl Treat. And then this is another person that we mentioned this morning, which was The Keys of the Kingdom, is Sylvia Kaufman. And then the next page is really, for part 2, is the High Bottom Drunks. I don't have all of the names of all of the people in this one, but I do have a couple. The Fear of Fear, which is the second story, is Cecil Kilkoff. I don't know if I pronounced that right. And then number 4 is Physician Heal Thyself, is a Dr. Earl M. If you turn the page to VIII, number 9 is Chester Rudd or Rude. I'm not sure if I said that right, Rob, but we'll call it Chester Rudd. And then down on number 16 is Acceptance Was the Answer. was a Dr. Paul Ollinger. And then we go back to the low bottom drunks, and that is on page IX, and that would be number 2 is Phil Parker. Number 7 is Bob Kay. And then if we go to the next page, it's page X. Empty on the inside is Beth H. Grounded, which is also a book written by this person. His name is Lyle Prowse. Very good book, actually, about his ordeal with alcoholism. And then number 12 is Another Chance, and that is Bertha V. Okay, so that kind of covers some of the table of contents and first couple of pages of the book. Rob, did you have anything you wanted to add to some of that?
Yeah, I'll just let everybody know there's a lot of stuff that I post into the chat. Some of it is useful, some is useless. Pick and choose, because some of it is gold to some people, and some of it, they're not interested in the history. A lot of the pictures that I have of some of these people, I put them in the chat, just so you get an idea that these are real people. They had real problems, and that's why I put the pictures in. It brings these people to life for me. So, I've collected them, I throw them in the chat. There's also an awful lot of books and things that we've read that I also post up that talk about, a lot of people have studied about the Big Book. Not only Bill Shaberg, who did writing of the Big Book, but other people that have done, the book on Bill W. There's been quite a few of them, Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers, all these books that have different nuggets of information that enhances what is already in this book right here. So I post those up in the chat too, if I think it, or if Leo makes a comment about something that might be a little bit, just mentions it, and I have something that will correspond or tell you where that came from, etc. I'll throw that in the chat too. So the chat, especially at the beginning of the book, because there's so much history at the beginning of the book. Dr. Silkworth, Bill's story, there's an awful lot of information that can flow through the chat. If you don't want to see it, because it takes your focus away from the study, because that's not what I want to do. What I want to do is just enhance it with the things that are in the chat. So if you don't want to see it, all you have to do is make sure your chat is turned off and you won't see any of this stuff. All this stuff you can download to your own computer because if you save the chat, images do not save. All that is saved is text files or text. Okay, so if you want any of this information, you can also just email me and I will send this to you. Okay, all this is to be shared. It is not for my use only. It is for all of us to make things just all these things come to life. So that's my 2 cents. Sorry, Leo.
No, that was great. That's perfect. All right, we are on, let's go ahead and move forward here. We're on page XI, and that is the preface of the book. And Rob, if you'll go ahead and read first part of this.
Would love to. Now, is it a preface or a preface?
I say preface.
Sorry, I just get a kick out of that one.
Yep.
This is the 4th edition of the book, Alcoholics Anonymous. The first edition appeared in April 1939, and in the following 16 years, more than 300,000 copies went into circulation. The second edition, published in 1955, reached a total of more than 1,150,500 copies. The third edition, which came off press in 1976, achieved a circulation of approximately 19,550,000 in all formats.
Wow. So quite the explosive growth there in the first decades of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is more than just a book. It's designed to transfer information, and I think it's important to that you need this knowledge in order to get sober. It's a book that enables you to have a spiritual experience, and it's a spiritual experience that's large enough to affect change for recovery. And so it's quite the book.
It certainly is, Leo. And the book cover was done by Ray Campbell, which is the original, the red, yellow with the dot. And he was the one that had the story in the book, an artist concept. And he was the one that when you read the spiritual experience, he's the one that had the I'm going to go to it, 567. So it's on page 568. But he is the one that had, there is a principle, which is a bar against all information, which is proof against all arguments, and which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. That principle is contempt prior to investigation. Now here it is attributed to Herbert Spencer, but it was really William Paley who came up with that. Now, that was in his story. And his story was taken out of the book, and but a lot of people really like that quote, so Bill put it back in, put that quote in the spiritual experience. So there's a little bit of history. Because this book has become the basic text for our society and has helped such large number of alcoholic men and women to recovery, there exists strong sentiment against any radical changes being made in it. Therefore, the first portion of this volume describing the AA recovery program has been left largely untouched in the course of revisions made for the second, third, and fourth editions. The section called The Doctor's Opinion has been kept intact, just as it was originally written in 1939 by the late Dr. William D. Silkworth, our society's great medical benefactor.
Yeah, and I think it's important to hear this paragraph. I've highlighted it. It's become the basic text. It is an important text for all of us as a part of AA. There exists strong sentiment against any radical changes, and they haven't really changed anything at all in the first portion of the book, other than add forewords and or in the table of contents, obviously, as they massage and change some of the stories that are in the back. And when we talk about the first portion of the book, we're not talking about just the first 164 pages. Again, we talked about that a little bit to begin with. It covers the title page, table of contents, the preface or preface, and then the other next 164 pages. Rob?
Good to bring out that it's a basic text. A textbook is something that usually you go to school and you have a teacher take you through it. And that's what AA is all about. It's normally we have a sponsor take somebody that has already gone through the book, take the newcomer through the book, points out the important pieces of it, because there's an awful lot of things that if I tried to read this by myself, I would gloss over many things, and some things I just wouldn't understand, and I'm too lazy to go and look it up or to ask somebody. So when this book came out in 1939, people would send in an order for it. It would be mailed out to them. They would read it themselves, and some people were able to get sober that way. Nowadays, we have sponsors that take us through the book, teach us about it, hit the high points, really hammer home of what we're dealing with. When I first came into the fellowship, I had no idea that I was suffering from something. I knew I drank too much, but I didn't know why. So I came into the fellowship thinking that they were going to teach me how to drink. properly, like a gentleman, that I wouldn't overindulge. That was my thinking. How many other people are coming into the fellowship thinking the same thing? Most of us don't know what we're suffering from. We know we drink too much, but we don't know why. What are the underlying issues that I drink too much? Okay. I didn't realize I was suffering from an allergy, the phenomenon of craving. And once I took alcohol into my system, that I was off to the races. I knew that once I started drinking, I could not do the things that I wanted to do. I was really heavily involved in karate at the time. I knew that once I had a drink, I could not go to karate because I knew that I would have too much. And you're not allowed to be on the mats if you've been drinking. Somebody can get hurt badly. So I knew that something was off there. And it wasn't until somebody in the fellowship, I was in the fellowship for 6 months before somebody even mentioned the allergy. And when they talked about, that once they started drinking, they couldn't stop. They wanted more and more and more. Then I went, oh, I can relate to that. I understand. But as I say, I was in the fellowship 6 months at that time. Now this is something we hope, especially for people that are in danger, that we get the message to them quicker than 6 months, because some people aren't going to last 6 months. So that's why, through this study, I will be hammering home the allergy and the obsession of the mind constantly. Why? Because it's so important that we understand what we're suffering from. And that baby is the cutest little guy that I've seen. You enjoy him. So, a couple of other things, the section called Doctor's Opinion. Well, Dr. Silkworth, we're going to learn about him when we go through the doctor's opinion. So, an incredible man, you know, and Bill Wilson was a tall man. Bill Wilson was about 6'3". Dr. Silkworth was about 5'4". So the dichotomy between the two men standing must have been quite humorous, but Bill had an awful lot of respect for Dr. Silkworth, and we all should, because you know what? He was not an alcoholic, but he cared so deeply for us. And thank you to Dr. Silkworth and all and his idea that, we all suffer from an allergy, phenomenon of craving. The second printing of the first edition added the appendix, spiritual experience. In the second edition, the appendices on AA tradition, the medical view and religious view of AA, the Lasker Award, and information on how to contact AA were added, and the appendix on the Alcoholic Foundation was discontinued. But the chief change was in the section of personal stories, which was expanded to reflect the fellowship's growth. Bill's story, Dr. Bob's nightmare, and one other personal history from the first edition were retained intact. 3 were edited, and one of these was retitled. New versions of 2 stories were written with new titles. 30 completely new stories were added, and the story section was divided into 3 parts under the same headings that are used now.
And I think that's a really good thing. Rob, real quick, what is the book that has all of the stories in it?
Experience, Strength, and Hope.
Okay, yep.
And you also can get all the stories free online. I'll get that link later on. But yeah, the book is Experience, Strength, and Hope. All the stories that were taken out of the big book are in there, but they all can be found for free online.
Nice. All right, and that's the other thing about this that we've referred to, and that is the appendix, the spiritual experience, which is on page 567, and that is something we'll refer to at least a couple of times as we go through this, the first portion of the book. And I think it's neat that they have so many stories in it, and they keep it fresh by changing it up. Now I know that there's a 5th edition that's going to be out, if I'm right, and it is it's going to be a change in the text from the level of readability So it'll be interesting to see how that book comes out and what
Plain
it,
language, plain
plain
language
language.
big book.
Yeah.
And that's not the fifth edition. That is going to be something separate.
Oh, okay. I'm
Okay.
sorry. So there'll be two different books. One is the plain language and the other one would be the fifth edition.
And that was something that I wanted to mention because because they talk about here, there exists strong sentiment against any radical changes being made in it. If you've checked any of the Facebook uh, groups and they talk about the plain language, a lot of people have strong feelings about it being changed at all. Bill Wilson was afraid that the big book was going to become frozen in time. No changes were ever going to be made to it. And that scared Bill because things do come up. Uh, so some, as I say, some people are strongly against plain language, and there's other people that say that you know it needs to be updated. If the plain language book isn't for you, stay away from it. You know what? Remember in the book it says we don't argue anymore. You
Yeah.
know, we stopped arguing with people. Why? Because it doesn't work. You yell louder, I yell louder. You dig your heels in, I dig my heels in. Nobody wins. The book is going to be coming out sooner or later. Hopefully it helps. You got to remember that Dr. Bob felt that the big book in 1940 was too difficult for people to read and had his people make up pamphlets. So even Dr. Bob felt that the book for some people was too difficult to read, but I digress. And I'll put the information where I got that from. In the third edition, part one, Pioneers of A. Oh, and also some of these people that wrote stories in this book are still alive. I was able to hear Lyle Proust. His story is Grounded. I heard he spoke and he read his story and then talked about it. He was an airline pilot that was arrested, you know, for drunk driving a plane. And to listen to him tell his story is it's quite fascinating. And there's a few other of these ladies. There's a couple ladies too that I've heard their stories. Nadia was one lady, the Perpetual Quest, and and Karen crossing the River of Denial. So it's these people are still around, alive, and you know when they tell their story, it's fascinating. You know, not everybody goes and reads the story. Some people have read a story here or there, they just were bored and flipped through it. Other people go right through the book and read each and every story. Some of them are quite fascinating. Some of the stories that were taken out, Hank Parkhurst had a story, The Unbeliever, and it is very difficult to read. Hank Parkhurst, who was Bill's right-hand man when the book was being written, took a writing course at the University of New York and thought he was quite the gifted writer. Very difficult to follow that story, I'll be honest with you. But it's interesting, to hear these things and to check them out. Sorry, Leo, did I step over what you were going to say? I
Oh,
apologize.
no, you're doing great. You're doing great, Rob.
The fourth edition includes the 12 concepts for world service and revises 3 sections of personal stories as follows. Our new story has been added to part 1, and 2 that originally appeared in part 3 have been repositioned there. 6 stories have been deleted. 6 of the stories in part 2 have been carried over. 11 new ones have been added and 11 taken out. Part 3 now includes 12 new stories. 8 were removed in addition to the 2 that were transferred to part 1. We're going to have a test on that, so please make sure you remember all that.
That's quite a mouthful there, Rob. So we'll just put it down that each as each edition comes out, they refresh it with new stories. They change the stories around a little bit, and which makes it uh, you know at least current with the times. That's part of why they do it, is just to stay current with the times for when the book was published. So. Um, I would just leave it at that, Rob. It's not much to
Well,
say.
is one thing I will say. You know what is going to be the biggest change from the fourth edition to the fifth edition stories?
What's that?
Zoom babies. People who have come in and have only done Zoom meetings because the pandemic came in and these people had no other place to go because in-person meetings were, I don't know about where you're located, but where I'm located, they were shut down completely. You couldn't find one. So Zoom was the place to go. And so there's Zoom, what I call Zoom babies, who have only known Zoom, who came and got sober through Zoom. This platform is incredible for the fact that, there are not a lot of big book studies in Toronto. They use the 12 and 12 a lot. Big book, very little. So I couldn't go to a meeting and just do the big book. Zoom opened up a whole new world for me where you can do big book meetings like meet incredible, smart people that are teaching about this book. It is incredible. To me, Zoom has been fantastic. Now, some of the long timers, people that have been in the fellowship for a long period of time, don't care for it. They like the in-person meeting, the face-to-face, etc. And that's fine too. We each have our what we enjoy. But as I say, for me, it opened up a whole new world for me. It invigorated me. It got me excited about AA again because I was doing a lot of service, opening up meetings, making the coffee, and the coffee was, I was getting better at it, getting better. But the thing is that I was getting frustrated at times going to different meetings and listening to speakers talk about how they came into the rooms and all of a sudden they became better. They never talked about how they got better, about their spiritual experience, how they gained it, how they did their 12 steps, things like that. So I was getting frustrated with that. So Zoom was a boon to me. All changes made over the years in the Big Book, AA members' fond nickname for this volume, have had the same purpose: to represent the current membership of Alcoholics Anonymous more accurately, and thereby to reach more alcoholics. If you have a drinking problem, we hope that you may pause in reading one of the 42 personal stories and think, yes, that's happened to me. Or more important, yes, I felt like that. Or most important, yes, I believe this program can work for me too.
Yeah, and you can actually change those three statements into questions for yourself as you're kind of looking at them. Did that happen to me? And I felt like that? And do I believe this program can work for me? It's uh, quite the book. Um, Rob?
And now we move on to a forward to the first edition. This was written by Bill Wilson. This is the forward as it appeared in the first printing of the first edition in 1939. We of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. For them, we hope these pages will prove so convincing that no further authentication will be necessary. We think this account of our experiences will help everyone to better understand the alcoholic. Many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person. And besides, we are sure that our way of living has its advantages for all.
So it's what we've got here is forward to the first edition, and we're going to be talking a little bit about Alcoholics Anonymous in that. This is the couple of things I like to cover at this point. One is the problem, the solution, and the course of action. The problem is the admission and or identification that you have a problem. Solution is to prescribe or provide um, in this book. And then obviously, course of action is the application of the program to your life and your sobriety. We're talking here about how the first 100 men and women, it's their understanding, not ours. So just a distinction there. They do, at least at the very beginning here, talk about the two symptoms of alcoholism, which is the mind and the body. And so at least they've mentioned it already right at the very beginning. And then the other thing too is that they're going to show us precisely how we have recovered. Again, there's that word, and it is the main purpose of the book. So a couple of things precisely so that they don't leave anything to chance. They're not vague in the book. They're very descriptive. And if they do ask a question, they always answer it, which is nice. And then have recovered is another a point of debate, I think, that is out there. Some people say that you don't recover from alcoholism, but the book itself says you do. And I certainly believe that once you've gotten past the demons, you've had a spiritual experience and that awakening, and you have solved the drink problem. At that point, I think you have recovered from alcoholism. So that's some people out there that believe otherwise, and that's good. It's a healthy debate, but I'm just saying that for us, Rob and I and Bill S. Have all recovered. Rob?
Yeah, no further authentication will be necessary. No other proof. This is all we need. Many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person. A lot of people think it's a behavioral issue. That you can control it if you really wanted to, but you don't want to. And as we know, and we will find out when we get into the doctor's opinion, the allergy. Once we take any alcohol, whatever, into our body, we're off to the races. We can't control the amount that we take until we black out, pass out, or somebody takes us away. So it is important that we remain anonymous because we are too few at present to handle the overwhelming number of personal appeals which may result from this publication. Being mostly business or professional folk, we could not very well carry on our occupations in such an event. We would like it understood that our alcoholic work is an avocation.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things here. They talk about this as being anonymous. I think it's important. We use our first names and last name for our identification. We don't talk about each other outside of AA. Although when we are in the groups, especially here, I know that we have a good time telling our stories and the such. The other thing is that it's an avocation. So it's important that we bring the message forward. We've got newcomers coming in all the time, and it's a good thing to want to carry the message forward. I've lots of words there, Rob. But the alcoholic work is for Bill W. especially was in fact a full-time job, and I know that there's not many out there that have that ability to do that these days with everything going on in everyone's lives. But it is nice to know that this is something that's important enough to get the message out and carry it forward. Rob?
Yeah, remember that when the big book was published, it wasn't long after that Bill and Lois were kicked out of their family home. The mortgage holder took over the home. So Bill and Lois were homeless, and they ended up living at one of the clubhouses. So they were able to give all their time to Alcoholics Anonymous. Dr. Bob working in a hotel, or working in a hospital. working with, they talk about, he worked with 5,000 alcoholics, incredible. You know, the Depression happened in 1929, lasted for a long time. And, these people did not have a lot, but you know what? They shared everything that they had. Bill and Lois took people into their home, to try to sober them up. Dr. Bob also took people into his home to try to sober them up. They found that bringing people into their home was not such a great idea. Uh, Dr. Bob's wife was chased around the house by Eddie, who had a butcher knife. Luckily Bill caught him. But these are things that they had to do in these times because there were no detoxes. There weren't rehab facilities that people could just go to, you know. So they took people into their homes and detoxed them, gave them, a drink every few hours in order so they wouldn't go into the DTs, delirium tremens. The lengths that these people went to is incredible. What they would do for their fellow man, you know, it really astounds me when I think about what they would do. I wouldn't think about bringing somebody into my home, you know, but they did. When writing or speaking publicly about alcoholism, we urge each of our fellows to omit his personal name, designating himself instead a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Very earnestly, we ask the press also to observe this request, for otherwise we shall be greatly handicapped. We are not an organization in the conventional sense of the word. There are no dues or fees whatsoever. The only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop drinking. We are not allied with any particular faith, sect, or denomination, nor do we oppose anyone. We simply wish to be helpful to those who are afflicted.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that Rob just read that we'll cover here. It is they do start talking about the fellowship, which is different than the program itself. Fellowship is much like what we're doing right now with regard to the group and talking about the program. We do actually stay anonymous and just as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. We ask that the press also observe this request, and it largely has been able to be done that way. They're not an organization in the conventional sense, although I think we're more organized now than we used to be back then. There are no fees or dues. We don't do that. That's a nice thing that as everybody, it's free to participate, and with an honest desire to stop drinking, that's the only requirement. There used to be 100 or more requirements that they had a list of things that they wanted you to abide by in the very beginning in certain groups, but they finally came to down to just the one. The only requirement is an honest desire to stop drinking. And they are not allied with any particular faith, sect, or denomination. There is religious overtones to this program, but it's not a religion in and of itself, and it's not something that we practice in that regard either. Rob?
Yeah, and you got to remember something that Dr. Bob, anonymity is outside the rooms, not inside the rooms. If Leo gets sick and I go to the hospital to go visit him and I go, well, I want to talk to Leo, where's the baseball cap? Leo, glasses, where's the baseball cap? I'm not going to be able to find Leo. Okay. So within the rooms, I should be able to contact Leo. Okay. But it's outside press radio, for the normal people, or what we like to call sometimes the normies, people that can drink, and put it down. Okay. For those people, because if somebody does go back out, it brings a black eye to everybody. Okay, but within the room, because as I say, if I want to go to one of my friends in AA, I did not know his last name. All I knew him as is Rocker John. That was his name. And, everybody's got usually a nickname within the rooms, you know. And so this guy's name was Rocker John. He was in palliative care, trying to find him. Well, Rocker John, he kind of looked like Keith Richards because he kind of looked like that. But you know what? I found him, but it was difficult. And it shouldn't be that way. It really shouldn't. And as my friend Bill S. from New Jersey said, Gary with the big ears. Gary he's got big ears. These are things we do. It's silly, but we can laugh about it. But you know what? If somebody does go into hospital, we want to be able to find them. We shall be interested to hear from those who are getting results from this book, particularly from those who have commenced work with other alcoholics. We should like to be helpful in such cases. Inquiry by scientific, medical, and religious societies will be welcomed. Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah, and I wanted to say that this is a we program, not a me program. It's we is used 18 times in the book. So I think that's an important distinction here as we kind of go forward. The work with others, alcoholics is the important ingredient here. And even those that haven't fully completed the steps can work with other alcoholics. Somebody with only 2 or 3 weeks of sobriety can actually help somebody with 1 or 2 days or 3 days of sobriety. And that's the important part here is working with others. So with that, Rob?
Yeah, the only other thing I want to bring up before we bring in Bill is the only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop drinking. In 1958, they took honest out, and so it became the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. So that's the only thing I want to bring out. And do you want to bring in Mr. Bill?
Yes, sir. That's it.
And I hope he tells his pizza story.
Yeah, hi, this is Bill, alcoholic from New Jersey. Thanks a lot, guys. Good start here. Yeah, basically, well, what we went through, this is general information and some history of what went on in the beginning of the book. And there's some real good information in here. Like was mentioned right on the title page. This is the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. This book says we can recover from alcoholism. And the reason story is so important is because there's thousands of men and women, but there's one story of recovery. Story is singular. It doesn't say stories. We have all different stories of our drinking, but our recovery story is the same. According to Alcoholics Anonymous, you go through the steps. That's the story of recovery. That's why story is so important. And all the contents and everything, they have all different people in here. And you can go online and you can find a lot of these names. Most of the names Leo had or Rob had. But you might be able to find some more if you go through some of this stuff. And the preface is, again, that's like a general information or an overview of what went on in the beginning, how they changed the book. And they didn't change the first portion of the book. What they changed was the stories, because they're trying to update the stories so that each new edition of the book can reach out to more people who are in AA at the time. And the forward to the first edition, that there's some real good information in there. It was pointed out already. I'll point it out again. It says right in the first paragraph, to show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. It says that we've recovered, and the main purpose of this book is to show other alcoholics how we recovered. It's not to keep us sober, it's to show other people how to recover. And that's what our job is to show other people how we recovered. And we recovered the same way the first 100 did. If we're going to follow along with what the first 100 did, whatever their ideas were, we're supposed to have the same ideas. That way, so we're in sync with what the first 100 did, and we're supposed to be passing that on to people that don't have it. And the people that don't have it would be the newcomers. So actually, this book is oriented towards newcomers. It's not oriented towards explaining to an old timer or a long timer on how to stay sober. We already know that by going through the 12-step process. We already know how to stay sober. We're supposed to carry this message to others. And the main purpose of this book is telling us that's what we're supposed to do. And there's some real good information, like it says, no further authentication will be necessary. All the information that's necessary for somebody to stay sober is in this book. We don't have to add stuff to it. We don't have to find more information outside of AA. All the information in this book is all that a person needs to stay sober. I like to use the analogy of the pizza delivery guy. The guy that delivers the pizza got no business adding anything to the pizza. The pizza cook or the pizza chef already made the pizza the way it was supposed to be. And the delivery guy's job is just to pass it on, not to add stuff to it. If the delivery guy starts adding stuff to it, by the time he gets it to whoever he's supposed to deliver it to, he's going to have a box of slop instead of a box with a nice pizza in it. And all the information that's necessary was already put in this book. We've got no business adding anything to it. We're just supposed to pass it on the same way that it was written in this book. And all we can do is explain what it means to people. And that's what our job is, to pass this particular message on. And like I said, there's some really good information in here. And this is like the beginning of AA. And it's explained to us what we do. And like was mentioned, we was used in the forward of the first edition 18 times. Bill Wilson understood this is a we program. He understood how important the word we is going to be. Later on, when we get to like the forward to the third and fourth edition, they don't even use the word we in there. But the word we is used 18 times in this forward to the first edition. It's only like a page and a half. It's not, or not even quite a page and a half. And they used we 18 times. You know, I get drunk. We stay sober. It's really, really important that we try to do this with each other. We don't have to do this alone. If we could have done this alone all by ourselves, we wouldn't be here. That's the reason we're all here in AA, because we needed help and we couldn't do it by ourselves. And Bill Wilson understood that. So basically, like I said, there's a lot of information in here, and this is good stuff. And a lot of people skip over the forwards and everything. They start at page 1 on Bill's story. And the forwards and the doctor's opinion have a ton of information in it. And there's a lot of stuff here that we need to know. And this stuff is going to help us stay sober or help us be able to pass the message on to somebody else. And and right at the second to the last paragraph on page XIV, it says, we shall be interested to hear from those who are getting results from this book, particularly from those who have commenced to work with other alcoholics. We're not even up to anywhere in the book where the steps are yet. And the forward here is already talking about they want to hear from people that work with other alcoholics. That's how important working with others is. It's right here, right in the beginning of the book. Before we even start talking about the program, they're telling us how important it is to work with others. Why? Because that's what keeps us sober, and that's what builds up our self-esteem and makes us feel good about ourselves. We don't just get sobriety out of trying to help somebody else. It makes us feel like our life is worth something. And whenever you do something to help somebody, it builds up your self-esteem, and you say, oh, wow, look at that. I'm capable of helping somebody. I'm not useless. I'm worth something. And when you believe you're worth something, it's easier for you to stay sober. That's pretty much all I got. Thanks a lot for letting me share.
Thanks, Bill.
All right, Rob, we'll go ahead and close out with the Serenity Prayer and open things up.
Okay, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.